Hello, everyone. We are live from the Olympiastadion in Berlin, which unfortunately is going to be the last stadium Italy will see at Euro 2024 because they've just lost 2-1 to Switzerland, deservedly, I would say. They didn't show anything. I mean, the Azzurri were really flat, were really poor. Spalletti said, I've just heard his press conference, just attended it, and he said that it was of course deserved. He said he will have to change things, especially select players with more physicality, because he said we are not able to match the quality that we have with the tempo and with the intensity that we should have. So this is the first thing that he wants to change. He mentioned injuries to a few players. The only one who called and actually mentioned directly is Destiny Udogi, which I don't know how much could have helped here. But the feeling that I had, we've covered all games live from the stadiums here in Germany. The feeling that I had is that Italy were not there in terms of intensity. They were not there in terms of physicality, and so they struggle with passes. They struggle with qualities. Too many errors. Too many mistakes. What do you guys think?
I mean, wow, that was with all due respect tough to watch, wasn't it? Christ, where to even begin thinking about a rebuild there? Really, there's so much that you could start with. I think if there are any positives at all to be taken from today's performance, perhaps it's a reset in expectations for where this team is currently and where this team is on its journey under Luciano Spalletti. It's really tough, and it's tough to see it getting any better in the immediate future. Where these players, like we said in our pre-match show, where are these players going to come from? You can't just magically bring players into an international side. I know there are a couple of guys missing. Spalletti might have touched on Destiny Udogi there. Maybe he might have provided a bit more natural width at wing back or full back today. Perhaps Sandro Tonali can come back in and make a difference in midfield. But for me, there was just no plan in terms of creativity and the attacking outlet in that Italy side today. And I really struggle to see how that's going to improve in the near future. But what do you guys think? I mean, Matt, what were your takes on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty stunning to see how disjointed Italy looked from start to finish. I mean, the starting impression was poor, and we always harp on the importance of coming out strong in the first 15 minutes. That's the tone-setting stage of the match, and it was all Switzerland. Early on, they even had a chance. It looked like they were going to get beat Italy for another quick goal. They weathered the storm, and then they were hit with a good goal by Freuler. Good finish. Gigio couldn't keep that one out. He's been amazing. He's been, without question, Italy's best player at this competition. After winning player of the tournament at the last Euro, right? So, at least you have in goal. Not many nations can say they went from Buffon to Donnarumma and not really skip a beat in that department. So credit to him. But next to that, there really wasn't many takeaways. I mean, you could say Calafiori was good at this tournament, Bastoni, but the collective effort wasn't there. And, it was pretty appalling to see, even some of the steadiest of players look just really out of sorts. I mean, even Barella in the midfield was shocking. I mean, it wasn't even, you can say whatever you want about Cristante, not being up to this level, or Fagioli coming in and saying, hey, this is his first start in a big moment. But Barella, you look to your leaders in the midfield, and when you don't have, Jorginho, you don't have De Verrattis, you don't have some of those guys that were cornerstones of, the previous Euro, you have to have some sort of establishment in the midfield, and Barella didn't prove that. I mean, misplaced passes all over. Even when they were trying to press the Swiss back, it was just too easy for them to build up, and they got through. And then just the pressure to close down wasn't even there. The lack of urgency on this team was pretty upsetting. And I think, again, we can highlight all the things that Italy didn't do right, but I think we have to give credit to the Swiss team. I mean, we talked about it in the pre-match, right? How experienced this group is under their current coach, how, unified they are. And you can see that early on. They're so incredibly balanced. I mean, Granit Xhaka in the midfield, this guy, is aging really well, and international football has seemed to bring the best out of him. So all credit to Switzerland, fully deserved. Italy are going home, fully deserved. And that there's got to be some soul searching, right, with Spalletti's future. What this team is going to look like throughout World Cup qualifying. To Peter's point, where is the talent going to come, right? Jorginho is going to be just a little bit older. Some of these other players are going to be just a little bit older. So Italy has a lot of work to do to get back to being at the level they need to be.
Yeah, but I think, for performances like tonight, like Spalletti said in this press conference that Italy were really under par. He said just against Spain. He said we played well against Albania. We were quite good against Croatia, especially in the second half. And we were under par tonight, and of course against Spain. So these are the only two games that, according to Spalletti, were not satisfying, and we couldn't agree more. We can discuss about the Croatia game because there were highs and lows, gray zones. It was a not entirely decided, not decided at all by tactics, but just decided, out of craziness, really. So I think the problem, we've been talking in the pre-match about Di Lorenzo, Fagioli. We received questions about the wing backs, the full backs, but the feeling that I have is that anyone could have played in this Italy side, and we were just struggling. Probably we were struggling physically. Probably we were struggling mentally. This is another thing that Spalletti mentioned in his post-match press conference. He mentioned Inter, so maybe some Inter fans won't be happy about it. And he said sometimes even unconsciously you tend to stop. You tend to take a break when you win the title with all this advantage. He didn't blame Inter, of course. He didn't blame Inzaghi. He said they are a top club. You still hear me? Cool. He said they are a top club. They're very serious, so they continue training properly. But he said maybe unconsciously some of those players were like we have won the title. Not saying that they were not motivated enough, but when you reach a target, then is exactly when you switch off, then it's hard to switch on again. We have a few comments, but what I want to say here, rather than talking about, of course, we need to talk about who's coming next. We need to talk in terms of players rather than coach, because I think Spalletti will stay. If he doesn't, of course, he was very disappointed. Of course, he said the responsibility is mine because ultimately I'm the one who chooses the players. So he took full responsibility, but at the same time, he said we'll have to change something. So I don't agree too much with those who say Italy don't rely enough on young players. They don't give them chances. Of course, it's difficult, especially economically, to buy young players, Italian with quality. It's not so easy in the transfer window, and it's easier to get probably players from abroad. But at the same time, this team was filled with many young players. They were not given the chance because Cambiaso was there, Buongiorno was there. Bellanova was there and they never played. There are many young players who are raising, and they were given a chance, but only partially because they never really played in this tournament. Of course, we need to discuss, and right now I would tend to put more blame on Spalletti than on the players, because everything that was done was just poor, was just bad. But this doesn't mean he has to go. Of course, we know a coach like Spalletti will need time. He will need time at the club, so we need even more time with the national team. Of course, we can't mess out anymore. We have World Cup qualifiers. We have National League. We have a lot of key games coming up. I'm very disappointed. Fans are very disappointed. They booed the team. The players were going to apologize, but they didn't even want to hear them. So it's everyone's disappointed. But I think if we sack Spalletti, or if Spalletti leaves now, we've just wasted 10 months and won European Championship.
I would agree with you there. Personally, though, that tournament has obviously not gone to plan whatsoever, and the performances have been completely lackluster in some of those games. You're losing 10 months of development, of progress, a complete waste of time, as you hinted at there, Lorenzo. sack Spalletti now. I also think a lot of the really exciting Italian coaches are also currently tied up in decent, attractive jobs. So it comes to the question of who would you get in to replace Spalletti, and realistically, the short list of available coaches. Really, are there many more sort of enticing options that you'd have courage and confidence behind to lead Italy into the World Cup? I'm not sure. I think it comes more so down to the current crop of players that Italy have at their availability, and frankly, I just don't think they're quite good enough to compete currently with the top nations in the world. I mean, fingers crossed, some very talented young Italian players will be breaking through in the next couple of years and developing. Bellanova is someone you touched on there. I thought today's game was crying out for him on the right hand side of that Italy midfield or defence. Obviously with Di Lorenzo, who I thought had another shocker today. We just really weren't seeing anything coming down that right hand side. There were misplaced passes to Chiesa. Chiesa was looking frustrated with him at points, even in the first half. This was coming from a supporter watching at home on TV, and they looked visibly frustrated and disjointed, like Matt had pointed out earlier.
We have a comment from this Mr. Bone, sorry, Peter, who says, I've never seen Italy play this bad. I've been watching Italy since 1994. A lot of colleagues were saying the same thing. And I mean, if you World Cup, if you think that Italy haven't played a knockout game at the World Cup since we won it in 2006, it's quite incredible. It's quite something. So of course there have been plenty of disappointing performances over the last 20 years. What I don't remember is a team that 25 minutes to go, 30 minutes to go, even 40 minutes to go, there's still time. You can still push, you can still produce something. It looked like they didn't even believe in it. They couldn't press, they couldn't make 2 straight passes. I mean, it was a very, very poor performance. And what surprised me the most was this. It looked like they had given up already after the second goal, and probably I don't know if it was the attitude. Maybe they didn't believe in it enough. Probably they weren't fit enough. Spalletti says it was a fitness problem. At least this is what he said in over the last few days as well. So this is what the most disappointing thing is exactly this. What's your take on this, Matt?
I mean, it's hard, right? Because I think that's, when you see Italy do what they did at the previous Euro, you feel like, okay, like they lure you in because you feel like, okay, Italy's back. And then it's the World Cup disaster. And you're like, whew, you kind of sink into your seat again because you're like, these projects are so very short-lived that you don't even get to see them out. It's not like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel where you say, hey, we're going to give Spalletti the opportunity. We have all these players coming up and, you got to give them one cycle to see it out. But, Italy can't get out of their own way. And I don't necessarily think it's directly down to a, player quality problem. Because I think if you look in this team top to bottom, there's real good quality and there's players that are playing at top clubs. I mean, Donnarumma, Bastoni, you have Scudetto winning players and top players that are really sought after across Europe. So what's the issue? Why can't we translate it consistently at the international level? And I think that, it's interesting. We're not too far removed from what the U17s did and what the younger tiers of Italian national team are accomplishing. And everyone's saying, what is the disconnect between those players and that pipeline to get them to be solid senior first teamers? And, I don't have the answers. Maybe you guys can shed more light on it. There is quality. I mean, you don't have Tonali here. You don't have Udogie, who I think 2 players, you mentioned physicality. Tonali helps in the physicality department. Udogie, Peter, you mentioned, stretches the game a little bit, gives him more width, is more physical, has a Premier League background now with Tottenham. Like, I think that and even Scalvini, maybe Scalvini is in there instead of a Mancini. Who knows? Maybe he can play a little bit at the base of a midfield. That's something that he's good at as well. He can distribute. So I think that Italy was missing some key pieces, no doubt. I do think, though, that for all the issues that they experienced at this Euro, I think at the very least, Italian fans wanted to see them come out swinging a little bit more and have a little bit more fight. You can respect losing to a team like Switzerland who have played really well this tournament, who in recent tournaments have been very strong and a tough out. But it's another to kind of put this performance out on the pitch. Lorenzo, you said it was pretty balanced in terms of the showing from Italy supporters. It felt like the atmosphere was there for Italy to do something, and they didn't. So it kind of leaves you, from this conversation saying, like, what's next? Is Italy going to make a World Cup? Are they still figuring things out? Where's the talent coming from? And it's a broader conversation.
Yeah, I think these qualifiers are going to be really, really important to see where Spalletti is going to take this team over the next couple of years. I mean, the way I think about it is that realistically there are three things that could possibly go wrong with a national team. So you got the coach, you got the players, and the system. And if we're being realistic, as a supporter of the Italy national team, I'd be happy to stick with Spalletti for a little bit longer, given these qualifiers, to see where this goes. As we were saying earlier, I think letting him go now is a little bit of a waste of time, a waste of the last 12 months. But other than that, the players and the system particularly, which was just all over the place and was changing from game to game, it does not instill a lot of confidence in the players, surely, particularly when you don't quite have the players that Italy have been used to in previous years. As we were saying in the pre-match show, there's not a Del Piero and there's not a Totti anymore. So without those types of individually brilliant players, you really need to know your system and be drilled in that and know how you're going to go into a match. And it just seemed like Italy had no plan whatsoever, particularly moving forward. I mean, the first goal today, I think, was quite a shambolic piece of defending, to be honest. The second one, okay, fair enough, a pretty decent strike, and Donnarumma did quite well to get a fingertip to it. But moving forwards, I don't see at all how this is going to get any better anytime soon. I don't know if anyone else has anything to contribute on that.
After the Spain game, second match in the group stage, Spalletti makes 2 substitutions at the break. So from that moment, we've never had the same lineup for 45 minutes in a row. Changed. He confirmed the lineup, the Albania lineup confirmed against Spain, and then he said it was a mistake because he should have rested a few players because they couldn't be on the same level as Spain in terms of intensity and tempo. So he said after the game it was a mistake not to confirm, not to rotate a little bit. End of the first half against Spain, there's 2 changes, 1 or 2 changes during the break against Croatia, 1 substitution again today during the break. So we've never kept from the Spain game the same lineup for 45 minutes in a row, which says a lot about the confusion, which says a lot about how many things Spalletti had in mind. He said that he will need more time. He mentioned other coaches that had 20 games under the belt before coming here, other 30. I had only 10. It's of course I think Spalletti wants to stay here, and I think the federation want to keep him as well because he has quite a strong relationship with Gravina, and Gravina has always been pretty close to the team and to Spalletti during the Euros. So I don't think he's going to throw me under the bus and just say, okay, you went out in the round of 16, you go. I think Spalletti will stay. I'm saying this because we got several comments on, of course, the coach. Somebody says, get rid of that Spalletti needs to go, bring Ancelotti, or even somebody says, bring Allegri. I don't think it's the right thing to do, honestly, regardless of the possible replacement. Again, I want to repeat again, we would lose 10 months. We would have lost 10 months if we sack Spalletti straight away, because we knew from day one you would need time. If you think one coach is going to change everything in 10 games, I think it's very wrong, especially in today's football. So it needs time. That being said, there's a lot on him, probably his staff. I don't know the preparation Italian players did. I don't know if it was too heavy. I don't know what happened down there, but Italy, they couldn't even press, they couldn't even run. Of course, it's down to the coach. Of course, it's down to Spalletti, to the player selection as well. Of course, there was the injury to Azzurri, so he clearly thought about starting with a 3-man defense because they called 6 centre backs. Think about Buongiorno and Gatti, they haven't even played, and not even Mancini would have played if it wasn't for Calafiori's injury. So a lot of things have changed, but he didn't use. He selected players for the 3-man defense, and then he ended up playing 3 games out of 4 with a 4-man defense. So there was confusion from the very first moment, and you could see that on the pitch, I think.
What do you guys make of the? Because I'm seeing it across the board on social media, and people are criticizing Spalletti, on maybe choosing players on maybe his own personal, agendas versus merit. What do you guys make of that? Because I think that that was such a huge talking point coming into the Euro when he announced his preliminary roster and his final roster, saying this person should have been there, this person shouldn't have been. Why is this person here when this person was available? What do you guys say to that?
I think you get that with any squad in most countries anywhere in the world, really, around a summer tournament or a major tournament. There's always going to be supporters from certain clubs who want one of their key players in there who hasn't made the cut. People are always going to be upset by some of the inclusions and exclusions as well. For me, realistically, I don't think there are any players that weren't in that squad that changed the result of today's game, really. I think start to finish, it was all over the place. And as I've said a couple of times, I think it's that creativity in midfield and the sort of spark in attack. I don't think Italy left any players, or Spalletti left any Italian players at home who would have been able to provide that for them today, which is tough to take, but that's the reality of it. I just don't think the current players were set up for the system that you played today, specifically not. But as we were saying, there's just been so many different systems, so much confusion, and then also a group of players who aren't quite up to the required standard to get you over the line sometimes when you need it. It's going to provide issues, and Italy certainly had quite a lot of issues today.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting so many comments, really. Of course, again, everyone's blaming Spalletti because, of course, he's the coach. And again, I do think that Spalletti has responsibility for this because it's been just too poor all over, really. What's the strange thing is that he kept saying we want to keep possession, we want to dominate proceedings, we need to keep the ball and dominate. And then when you see performances like today, or you see performances against Spain, it almost feels like you just wanted to sit back and wait for the opponent and then try to score on the counter. I mean, it was exactly the opposite of what he wanted to do. And so why was that? Was it just for the fitness? Was it because the players, they don't entirely believe in what they hear? Because many times, even when we had the ball and we were unable to run or to counter press, but when we had the ball and there was a pass in the middle, but the player who was supposed to receive the ball wasn't going towards it, but was going the opposite direction. What does that mean? The player is able to make the run, but he does it in the wrong direction. So does it mean... Capello said this morning that he feared Italy overthink because they are very concerned about what the coach wants and what he demands, and so sometimes they're not as natural, they're not as free in their heads because they think constantly about the tactics and what the coach wants. What do you make of these guys?
Well, surely it's always going to be difficult, and you're always going to be overthinking if the system changes every game. I mean, as you said, they've not been able to keep the same lineup for more than 45 minutes, and there's only a couple of days in between these matches as well for the most part. So there's not a lot of time for these players to get used to the system that they're meant to be playing in. Also, these players haven't really played together an awful lot. I mean, we saw for the last however long it was, Retegui and Scamacca coming on for it's the first time they played together, right? I mean, it just seemed like they were sort of rolling the dice, and I just didn't see any constructive plan there whatsoever. But yeah, overthinking is sort of obviously going to happen if players are being sort of overloaded with information and then asked to do something different from one game to the other. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Matt.
Yeah, Peter, I think you can see in this game, they were searching, right? They were like everyone looked just very disorganized. Like I said, Barella, certain players misplaced passes, expecting Scamacca to make a run. There was one instance where Fagioli made a good pass, but Scamacca didn't finish his run, or he wasn't where he needed to be to receive the ball. So they just really weren't on the same page, and I think it boils down to a lot of changing so much as Spalletti has game to game. I understand sometimes the circumstances call for that. You mentioned suspensions or injuries, and I can get all that. But I think, it doesn't transmit confidence to the players when the shot caller is running out a different 11 every match. And then also at the midway point saying, okay, I got to find this guy, put this guy in. And you can see he's it was kind of trying to piecemeal a progression to the next phase in mid game. And tactically, I didn't think he had it. And one of the things I wanted to just kind of mention on too is we've been talking about fitness. I mean, you can say that about any nation. Look at English players. They play some of the most matches, if not the most, of any nation, right? English players in the Premier League, they have all these cup competitions. So I can't say that fitness was an issue. I mean, it's a quick turnaround for all these countries to go out there and perform at a high level. So I don't know. I just think it was one of those things where maybe we need to see it out and give it time. Peter, you mentioned, and Lorenzo as well, pulling the plug on it now would be short-sighted. It would have wasted just about a year of what was being built. And we know that Spalletti is more of a project-based manager. I think it did take time with his Napoli, and you saw the results of what he was able to accomplish with the Scudetto. So I don't know. It was again, this was one of the more confusing performances top to bottom. I mean, there wasn't really anything that you can kind of pinpoint and say, hey, at least we got this going or we got that going. I think there's so many questions, leaving this tournament.
Yeah, Tom Gallis saying Gnonto could at least take a man. I mean, I really agree with Peter here. I mean, I don't see any player who is home who would have made a step forward for this Italy side. What I can say is that again we go back to the confusion in the team selection because, for example, Orsolini was left home. Again, not saying it would have saved Italy. I'm not saying this. What I'm saying is Spalletti selected this team to play with the 3-man defense, and then he played the 3 games out of 4 with a 4-man defense. We know systems are not everything. They don't explain everything, but the names that are on the Italy squad say a lot about the choices that Spalletti made. I mean, it's we had 3 wingers, and probably El Shaarawy was called because he can play as a left wing back, as a right wing back. Sometimes he did it with Roma against Milan, for example. But we didn't have wingers who were able to win one-on-one duels. We don't have it. Perhaps we don't even have them available. We don't even have outside this team. Yeah. So Gnonto, it could have been an option, but many other players could have been an option. The problem is that we didn't see clarity here. We didn't see a clear plan and a clear way to move forward. And another important thing, which is more structural and is not strictly linked to these 4 games at Euro 2024, we don't have players who dribble past opponents, who are strong in one-to-one. We don't have this such of creative wingers. Chiesa is the only one, but if he's not on his day, he goes down in confidence and you're done. You don't take anything out of that. We need these sort of players, and we don't have them.
Yeah, no, I think too is, you mentioned Gnonto, you have Berardi, who's been, one of the main players in this whole Italy for a while now. He goes down injured. And again, Peter, I agree with you. I don't think it's one of those if he chose Orsolini's going to unlock the game. It's not the conversation here, but I think it kind of becomes one of those things where, even, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Politano tweeted it basically like a graphic on his Instagram with a shrug emoji just right after Italy lost. And he's basically feeling everything that we're feeling. And, Azzurri supporters are feeling like he didn't get it right. He did maybe some of his selections tactically, all these sorts of things. It's just you kind of shake your head and shrug and say I don't know how he got it so wrong, but yeah, I'm not a believer in the fact that, one singular omission would have completely salvaged this Euro for Italy. That those game breakers don't exist in the Italian setup, unfortunately. It's not like you're leaving off, well, you left off Del Piero. If you would have brought off Del Piero instead of Totti, it's not that type of conversation, guys. We don't have the luxury of depth and game breakers that are sitting at home right now.
No, I completely agree. And don't get me wrong, there are talented Italian players not at the tournament or not in Spalletti's squad. But as we've all sort of agreed upon there, it's not a matter of a certain individual would have changed the result today. And also, we haven't actually touched on Switzerland yet, but it's not to be sniffed at. That's a very, very decent side Switzerland have, and a team that have been building over many, many years in several tournaments with quite a key core of players.
But again, I mean, you saw Switzerland. We saw Freuler, who scored the goal and had 2 assists before today's game.
Ndoye, too.
We saw Ndoye. We saw Ricardo Rodriguez. They were not exhausted. They were not tired, and they've been playing the same number of games. Of course, Bologna didn't play European competition, so it's kind of different. It's not like Inter or Milan or Roma. They played probably 10, 15 games more than what Bologna did, but they were not tired. They were not exhausted. I mean, they were not struggling to chase the ball. We couldn't even stand. I mean, at some point, they gave a ball to Di Lorenzo, and he couldn't even stand. I mean, it was so bad, really. I mean, it was.
Yeah. And look at Shaka. They went Leverkusen went to the final. Look at him.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And another thing, it's the personality. I mean, Donnarumma is the captain, okay, and he was by far the best player of Italy in the tournament, 100%, even more than 100%. I think it was Marocchi, ex-Juventus winger in Bologna, in the post-match interview with Sky. He asked Donnarumma, we saw a video from the tunnel at the break, where while players were waiting to get inside the pitch for the second half, no one was talking, not even badly, not even trying to motivate your teammates, or when sometimes tough confrontations are needed for the good of the team. There wasn't a confrontation at all. There was nothing, and like the players looked empty physically and mentally. So I don't know if they were overtrained. This is the feeling a little bit, to be fair, because, I mean, guys, you remember Napoli, you remember Osimhen. How is it possible that we produced 1 shot on target with Scamacca in 4 games? I mean, considering center forwards, 1 shot on target, that's it.
Sorry, Matt. Personally, I'm not sure I agree with the notion that the players are overworked. We're talking about elite level professional athletes. And actually, this sort of echoes some of the concerns that we've been hearing from England supporters as well recently. Where's the press when other teams are perfectly capable of doing it? It doesn't vary from nation to nation. These are players who play all over the continent, in different leagues, in different teams, in different setups. And invariably, some teams seem more able to press than others. And I completely don't get it. Is it a motivation thing? Because I can't believe that it's a fitness thing. I know it's been a long season, particularly for some of those players who are involved in longer cup runs, or I can't get my head. I can't really feel satisfied with the fact that we can just put it to one side saying, okay, the players are tired, because they're professional athletes, and other players from other nations are perfectly capable of pressing. As you were talking about Granit Xhaka, who went all the way with Bayer Leverkusen, Manuel Akanji, even who's played most of the season for Manchester City and in lots of cup games as well. Just man for man, inch for inch, all over the pitch, Switzerland just looked better than Italy in every department today. And I think that comes down to them being a more experienced team, a team that are used to playing with each other, have got massive tournament experience behind them at this stage, and a team and a system that is well set up, and the players are drilled to understand that. And you just don't get that feeling that Italy have got that yet with 10 months under Spalletti. I think he needs more time. I'm probably in that camp. I know not everyone will be, but I I think these players need time to gel together and learn how to play a proper system that they're all comfortable with and that gets the best out of them. Because I really didn't get any sense of that at any point in this tournament.
I think it kind of puts things into perspective about just how special that Euro team was that won under Mancini, right? I mean, Immobile wasn't firing on all the cylinders. They didn't have this sort of prolific, top producing striker at the international level. Immobile was very criticized, right? But there's something to be said about Mancini bringing him out, trotting him out every time, and that's my number 9. And the system working so extremely well. I mean, Insigne, Chiesa were playing really good football. The midfield was very balanced, very tidy, and defensively, it doesn't always have to come down to making an impact in quality. You look at the system, the sum of its parts, and Lorenzo, I think you make a great point because we're talking about, what was on the field, individual quality. They don't have this, they don't have that. But sometimes you need someone who can impact vocally, who could be a leader. Does Donnarumma strike me as that guy? I know he's experienced. He's been in the game for almost a decade now, which is pretty interesting because he's like 25, 26 years old. But is he that vocal leader when the game is in the balance that can, galvanize a changing room in the mold of a Chiellini or a Bonucci? I don't personally see it. And it's very difficult for it to come from a 25-year-old goalkeeper. You need someone who can be vocal out the back in the midfield, organize and try to slow the game down and try to steady the ship that way. And I don't see many individuals in this team currently that can do that, which is a concern going forward, because that's always been one of the backbone qualities of what Italy has been when they have been going well, is they have that leadership, they have that grinta, they have that personality that in these delicate moments, when the game is 1-0 at the break, to not get hit with a goal seconds into the second half. I mean, that was just that second goal was a microcosm of what's been wrong with Italy. Switched off, tons of space. Vargas picks it on his right foot, and he has a clear shot past Donnarumma. Great strike, but all the time in the world to make the strike. Where's the closing down? So it's like those sorts of things where it's uncharacteristic, and it's not something that I would have expected from this Italy, if I'm being honest.
I quite agree with Samuel here. Keep talking about amazing strikers, but we don't even create chances for them. I think this was the biggest problem during the Euros, of course, because Scamacca isn't a bad striker at all. We said in the pre-match that Spalletti not complained, but he said he has to improve in his positioning, where he go and gets the ball. He needs to improve basically where he receives the ball. That's what he needs to do better for the national team. But the main problem was that we didn't produce anything. We didn't, not a through ball, not a dangerous cross like today. Of course, the Spain game was different because there were many more saves from Donnarumma, but to some extent, this performance was even more disappointing because at some point, final 10 minutes, somehow they tried to press a little bit higher. There were a couple of corner kicks against Spain where you hoped you could score a goal. Not a big chance, but at least a little chance. Maybe today it's because we've been eliminated, so it's all worse today. But really, the intensity and the desire and how much they wanted to win this game, we just didn't see it. I didn't see it.
No, I'd also agree with Samuel's comment there as well. We saw Barella today playing as that almost number 10 position at various points for Italy, or at least being that most advanced Italian midfielder. And really, has that ever particularly been his game? He's never really been that sole creative outlet. He's a very, very talented player, Barella, of course. I'd rather see him running that right-hand channel in that more so number 8 position, with possibly someone doing that on the other side of him. But yeah, I mean, you can have all the decent strikers in the world, which I don't think Italy currently have. But what's the point if you're not getting the chances to them? And as you said, Lorenzo, that's been the problem all tournament, and actually probably for quite a while before that tournament as well. There isn't that spark. There isn't that player who can, create a chance out of nothing in the final third, take a couple of neat touches and slot a ball through. I mean, Italy weren't even set up to play like that today, of course. they were, first half, it looks like we were sort of setting back and hoping to hit on the counter attack. But then again, any brief chance where the ball did go forwards for Italy, there aren't those players there who were willing to run in behind. Maybe Nyonto might have made a difference or somebody, but for me, systematically, they were just all over the place, and I can't get over that.
Yeah, there was, with the 65th minute mark, I think Italy were down 2-0, and they were just passing the ball side by side. And Switzerland up 2-0 at that point aren't afraid to just put everyone behind the ball and say, we'll give you the ball, like, take it, we're up 2-0. And you didn't have anybody making runs. There was very static play. It was just kind of sweeping the ball back and forth. And rightfully so, the traveling Italy supporters were booing them, and they were disgusted with it. It was, where's the urgency? Where's the intensity? Where's the intangible aspects of the game that need to be shown and demonstrated in a knockout match? It felt like there was no urgency. It felt like it was a 1-1 game, and they were just playing for a tie. It's like, it's the knockout stage. You have to play with some sort of aggression and want to push forward and want to create chances. And I think that's another big issue is where are the chance creators? Because it feels like as though that the only approach was, as Lorenzo mentioned, wanted to counter and get them against the run of play. But where's the creation to unlock in that situation when you're trying to break down Switzerland, who can defend well, as we highlighted, are very systematically, they're very strong and structured. Those players don't exist, and I think that's where Italy, amongst other things, fell short.
I think Baresi Unico Capitano sums it up pretty well now with this comment you see there. Or, I mean, full respect for Rodriguez, of course, but yeah, I think it's quite true. I mean, all Switzerland players look like on their prime. But we said in the pre-match show, we said this is the best Switzerland side ever. I don't think this was one of the worst Italy sides ever. We've seen Italy with less quality than this. Antonio Conte's Italy out in the quarterfinals against Germany in 2006, was that? It was much worse than this.
Yeah.
We had Pelé and the daring attack. It was much worse than this, but he had an identity. Spalletti, I mean, Conte, exactly. He's a unique coach, of course, because we know how quickly he can impact a team and how quickly you can see that he's a coach of it. If you see a game now, you watch a game now, you're able to say the coach of that team is Antonio Conte because he's so quick in settling things up. That team was not as strong as this one. There was, not to disrespect them, but because I think the players that I'm going to mention are worse than those who played Euro 2024. Emanuele Giaccherini, De Sciglio, we mentioned Pelé, we mentioned it there. It was a worse Italy side than this one in terms of technique, in terms of quality, but the mentality, but the identity was entirely different. These 2 weeks, we didn't see a team with an identity. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not the most important thing. Ancelotti now is regarded as the best coach ever, probably. He says, I like that my team don't have an identity, but we need to be able to adapt to the opponents that we have. And when we can, we dominate proceeding, dictate the tempo. And when we can't, we sit back, we defend, and we try to score on the counter. This Italy side couldn't even decide. They wanted to play the ball, they wanted to have quality, they wanted to keep the ball possession, but what we saw was entirely different. Players spread all over the places. No consistency at all. It's okay if you want a team that just sit back, play on the counter attack. That's it. It's fine. But you need to be able to decide which kind of team you want to be. We didn't see what kind of team we want to be here.
I think that's going to be so important moving into these World Cup qualifiers, assuming that Spalletti is kept on as CT. They need to start developing that, and people are going to start to get. I think some people are already quite fed up with how Italy have played under Spalletti, and they're really going to start needing to create that identity and create that system that works for everybody, or at least find that system that works for most of the players. Because otherwise, I mean, how long do you leave it? I mean, there's a question for you. If this continues to not work for Spalletti, how long do you leave it? Do you give him half of the World Cup qualifiers? Do you give him the tournament? Do you call it quits at Christmas if it continues to get much worse? I don't know. I mean, as I said earlier, I still think it's worth giving him a little bit of time to try and move this team forwards and try and create a bit of that identity that we've been talking about. But yeah, I mean, what would you say, Matt? What are you leaning towards? Give him the entirety of the World Cup qualifiers to try and create that spirit, or if results get much worse, are you thinking of moving on?
The more I think about it, the more I'm leaning it slightly in the way of what you believe is giving Spalletti that opportunity, because I think, they don't really they're not afforded the luxury of substantial amount of games. You mentioned it, 10 games as a coach to forge an identity, which frankly, look, it's a vastly different thing to do internationally versus at the club level. And I love Ancelotti, no disrespect to him, but him saying that as the coach of Real Madrid versus having to do that in a smaller congested time frame and transmit that and have results at the international level is like an entirely different ball game. And that's for that reason, I think that, it's not, put it this way, if it's Spalletti is not the guy and Garvini's seen enough here to say, I've seen enough, he's not my guy, you have to make this decision. But you can't be like halfway in or out, in my opinion, because you don't want to get to a conversation where you give him a chunk of the qualifying games and now you're potentially on the brink of another disastrous failure to qualify for the World Cup, and then you're trying to again search for a coach. I think that conversation needs to be had very soon, if it's not already, and it needs to be established very early on, saying we committed to Spalletti. We know things are going to be a little bit difficult to start because it's not easy to transmit the identity and the vision so early on. But you don't want to be in that limbo conversation, because again, I think it's a confidence thing, right? We touched about confidence. When you're constantly changing players coming in and out, they don't know what their roles are. It's difficult to build stability and continuity. And I kind of draw like a little bit of a similarity between when Milan brought in Marco Giampaolo. They spent a substantial amount of money, got in some top players, and after 8 games, they're like, yeah, this is not working. We're bringing in a new coach. And things started to turn around. So that conversation needs to be had very quickly, because as I mentioned, the qualifying, that comes up really quickly on you. And before you know it, it's crunch time and they got to get locked in.
I think Tom Galli brings up another very good point here, talking about the dressing room thing we said a few minutes ago. No one was talking inside the tunnel. He believes this is clear indication that the players are not on board with the mister. I think this is going to be a key point. The relationship between the players and Spalletti is going to be a key point to decide whether Spalletti stays or not. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't think it's a conversation on Spalletti's point of view, at least, because he clearly wants to stay from what he said in his post-match press conference and his post-match interviews with television. So I think he wants to stay. I think he wants to stay, and I think as we said, the FIGC really backed him during the Euros, so they're not going to throw him under the bus at the first occasion. But we need to see if the key players were agreed. Of course, you can have disagreements with your coach. You can be not always on board, as Tom Galli says. But you need to have the key players on your side, and you need to have the key players with your same mindset. I think this is going to be crucial in knowing if Spalletti stays long term or if he says, I'm just leaving here because the team doesn't follow me. The feeling that I had is that not all players follow him. Because again, fitness was a concern, okay, but there was confusion. The ball was going in a way and players were going the other way. Mm-hmm. So we need to understand if that was because we were not lucid enough to think and to get on that ball before your opponent, or because you just don't understand what you have to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky. I mean, if your players aren't buying into the coach, I mean, I feel like that creates an entirely different conversation, really. That's really tough and quite damning of this national team setup. If the players are effectively going against the coach, then you've got real issues that need addressing, and possibly the whole thing needs uprooting and starting all over again. But I think you're right. If I was Spalletti, I wouldn't want to leave. I don't think Spalletti does want to leave. I think he'll want to continue and get better and improve this Italy team. That's what he does. But as we keep coming back to, yeah, I think people are going to start to get more and more frustrated if this team doesn't create a spirit and identity and a clear way of playing that works for everybody. People are going to start getting very, very frustrated by that. And as we said, some people are already really quite frustrated about that, understandably. So something needs to change, whether it's the players he calls up, whether it's the shape or the system. He needs to uproot it and start again, I think, after this tournament.
One final thing from here, Matthew. We've had so many messages today. We're reading one from John. He says we need a modern coach. But I would agree that when we hired Spalletti 10 months ago, we thought no one was more modern than him. Am I wrong?
I agree. I think Spalletti. I don't think it's that's the issue. I think, if you look at the way, again, it's different selections, different players at their disposal, right? But the way Napoli played under Spalletti not too long ago, everyone said they played modern, progressive. Pep Guardiola, all these sorts of coaches sung the praises of what Napoli were doing. So I don't think it's a conversation there. I think it's really going to come down to how unified is this group around their coach. Because it seems to me is that if you don't buy in and you lose the changing room and they're not all on board and they're not all in, that's where you really start to run into trouble. And I don't care what type of quality you have. You can have Brazil-like quality, German-like quality, French-like quality. If that group of players does not buy into the coach and their philosophy and their way of doing things, you're going to have a very difficult time getting results and getting to where you want to be. So that is something that's very interesting. And again, there's certain things that we are privy to that we have an actual view of. It's not like we've seen rifts between players and Spalletti. I mean, you could probably speak to it more than I can, Lorenzo. You've covered the games, you've been around the team a little bit more than I have, of course. So you can probably kind of get more of a pulse and reading on how the players are with the coach. But I think that halftime, situation kind of says a lot, right? Where it's down, they're not motivated, they don't seem like that this is something they can overturn. And that's 1-0. That's not 2-0. That's 1-0 in a knockout game. And we've seen how quickly things can turn around when you get a quick goal and it's game on, right? And I think it's just so interesting too that we are just days removed from such a like uprising, uplifting type of result against Croatia to get here, and how grim it turned so quickly. That's what really kind of throws me off. Is it's not like we had this sort of fizzled out and we didn't look like we had any sort of life at this competition at all. The Albania game was a prime example. Hit with the goal early on, everyone's like, oh, here we go, Italy's going to crumble. And they played a pretty solid game after that, and they turned it around. Spain game was an outlier, and the Croatia game. So you're at least expecting something more than what we saw in this game. And to come out as flat as they did, I think it says a lot about the players, yes, but also how the coach has maybe fallen short in getting these players prepped and to buy into his way of doing things.
It's a very sad night. I would never want to leave. I would never want to go. But unfortunately, we have to. Again, it was a very disappointing night. We hope we could do more of these live videos, at least for another couple of weeks, at least until the semi-finals. We played one in Munich and one in Dortmund. The one on the Italian side would have been Dortmund. Unfortunately, we won't get there. We have to finish the Euros here and also our live streams with all of you. We received so many comments and so many views. We are so grateful for all the participation, really, because it's been great, really, to talk about the Euros with you guys, with Wayne and with Richard, and with all of you readers of Football Italia. And you've been following us in so many, so we're super grateful for this. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do to change the result on the pitch, but hopefully we will be back soon for more previews, for more content here on YouTube. Yeah, just guys, just one final thing from you, and then we wrap it up. And tomorrow, I'll personally go back home in Italy, and then we continue watching the Euros. Unfortunately, without Italy.
Well, yeah, tough to take, isn't it? There's not a lot more I think anyone can say about that performance, really. Tough to take, tough to watch. But it's football. Italy will be back. Football will be back. I'm already looking forward to the start of the Serie A season and hopefully interacting with a few more, slightly more familiar faces these days. I've really enjoyed being part of this Euros coverage. It's such a shame, obviously, the way that it's ended and the fact that it's ended so early. But yeah, looking forward to the return of Serie A now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'll just piggyback off that and just say thanks to everybody that's tuned in. I know we've only done a couple of these, at least as this crew. I know Lorenzo messaged me and he was like, "You want to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was hoping we would be able to kind of ride it out for a couple more weeks, as he mentioned, but it stops here. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, all the support, and also you gotta stick by the Azzurri. This is the tough times, yes, that they happen, but Italy will be back. You just gotta galvanize around the team and hope that 2026 is good and we see Italy at the World Cup in North America. So thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you everyone who's been following us for these couple of weeks at the Euros. Again, we'll see you here on YouTube. We'll see you on the Football Italia website. Shame for Italy. This is life. This is football. We speak soon with more Euros, more transfer windows, and so on. Bye bye from Berlin.